Hey, what is going on, guys? Jake Verdon Tech here, back with another video, and hope you all have had a fantastic holiday. It's currently Christmas Day, but you guys probably won't see this video until tomorrow or the following day, so I hope everybody's had an awesome holiday. So today in this video, we're going to be talking about my new microphone setup that I recently upgraded to, which is my new Shure SM7B with the GoXLR from TC Helicon. So in this video, we're going to be going over the setup that I have with the SM7B and GoXLR. Not a whole lot to that. We're not going to go super in depth on how to set it up, but I will link to some really helpful tutorials if you guys are looking at a similar setup or just purchased one. We're going to talk about why I decided to upgrade my microphone setup from the Blue Yeti USB microphone I was using before. We're going to talk a little bit about USB audio interfaces and what I would recommend for users that or people that are looking to get into a setup like this, maybe for slightly similar applications or a little bit different. And lastly, we're going to talk about whether or not a XLR setup like this is worth the money. So going over the setup a little bit, as I mentioned, this is the Shure SM7B for the microphone. It is a dynamic microphone which doesn't require any phantom power and is really renowned for its sound quality. Often used in many podcasts, radio shows, and in some music studios as well. The SM7B's become very popular in the past few years for streamers and people doing podcasts, just for its really good sound quality and with that little bit of a more warmer bassy tone that the microphone tends to have. So since this is an XLR microphone and you can't just plug it into your computer via USB, this is an XLR microphone, so you do need a USB audio interface where you plug in the XLR cable to that, and then from your interface, you plug it in via USB to your PC. And for my USB interface, we're using the GoXLR from TC Helicon. So the GoXLR is an extremely popular USB audio interface among streamers, and that is for a variety of reasons, but the main thing is that it is a very multifunction use tool. Not only is it a USB audio interface where you can hook up a microphone via XLR, but it also gives you so many other features such as sound mixing, real-time equalization, and there's some more fun stuff for entertainment factors such as the sample pad and the voice effects board, which really makes this an ideal choice for streamers. So kind of going over why I went with the SM7B and the GoXLR. As far as the SM7B goes, is basically just the sound quality that this microphone is known to have. And a big thing for me that really had me wanting to upgrade my microphone setup is the fact that this particular microphone and a lot of other XLR microphones out there are dynamic microphones. So opposed to a condenser microphone like the Blue Yeti I was using, condenser microphones tend to just listen for sound, and on the other hand, dynamic microphones like the SM7B that I'm using is actually activated by sounds in my voice in this case. So that gives a lot of background noise rejection, and if you don't have the best sound treatment in the room you're recording in, or if you do get a lot of white noise and background noise, the SM7B does a tremendous job on blocking out a lot of those noises. Naturally, the SM7B does have a more warmer, more bassy tone to it, and that can also be stemmed from proximity effect. As you sit even closer to the microphone, you tend to get a little bit more of a more punchy, bassy sound, which kind of gives it more of that radio kind of podcast style sound. But it's also a microphone that you can have a little bit of a distance away depending on how you set up the gain. And for me, I really wanted to set up something kind of neutral where I don't have to always have the microphone right up to me. So you have a lot of creative freedom with this microphone, and depending on the USB audio interface that you go with. And this is a super important component to your XLR microphone setup. And I think this is where people tend to kind of skimp out at times if they do want to go the route of an XLR microphone. They tend to buy a higher quality microphone like an SM7B and then go cheap on the interface, and they're just not happy with the sound quality that they're getting. I am definitely not an audio expert, but I think it's safe to say that you want to spend equally or more money than the microphone that you have purchased, and just make sure you have a good quality interface. That way you know you're getting the best quality out of the microphone that you have. So the GoXLR is one of many USB audio interfaces on the market. Like I mentioned, it's definitely more popular amongst people live streaming, as it has a wide variety of functionality just aside from being an interface where you can connect your XLR microphone to. So a few reasons why I purchased the GoXLR for my USB audio interface. Reason number one is honestly just support. There's so many people out there that have paired the SM7B with the GoXLR, and there are a lot of tutorials out there on equalizer settings, noise gate settings, pretty much everything to get this microphone sounding where you want it to. And the second reason why I chose the GoXLR for my USB audio interface is mainly just because of simplicity. It may not look like a simple setup, but in this audio equation, we just have the SM7B and the GoXLR, and the GoXLR is just plugged into my PC via a USB cable. And luckily in the case of the GoXLR, even though the SM7B is a very gain hungry microphone, the GoXLR has plenty of power and signal to where we don't need anything like a signal amplifier in between the microphone and the GoXLR. And lastly, there just isn't anything quite like the GoXLR on the market as far as I know, and as far as how many features are packed into this device, not only for just overall audio quality, like, you know, the equalizer, noise gates, and all these sound settings you can adjust, but just all these settings you can adjust within Windows. When you plug in the GoXLR, it actually has multiple audio devices that show up, and this gives you so many options to customize and set defaults for your different mixers in either the GoXLR app or on your faders. It just gives you a wide range to really customize in how you control your PC and your audio. One thing I've really come to love is using OBS with the GoXLR. I actually, instead of the music function that comes default on the default settings for the GoXLR, I actually swapped it out for OBS. So now I have OBS volume controlled on one of my faders, which really comes in handy, especially when I'm playing my consoles. And then along with that fader, I also have my chat. So if the chat that I'm in, whether it's Xbox Console Companion, Steam, if it's too quiet or too loud, I can adjust it just by, you know, adjusting the fader, opposed to doing the Windows G, finding the source and doing that and interrupting your game. I can just do it on the fly with one of those faders. And then it also has my mic volume and then the overall system volume. And like I said, this can all be customized to whatever you want, and it really just comes in handy. So with all those functions, and then there's tons more with the effects and the sample pad, and of course all the equalizer settings, the GoXLR can be used for a pretty wide range of people, not just people that are live streaming. And as far as the hardware goes, it is really nice and super high quality from the feel of it. It's mostly made of different types of hard plastic, but the faders are actually motorized. So whenever, I don't know if you guys can see this, I'll actually show a clip of it, but the faders are motorized. So when you push the mute button, there's actually a motor inside of the fader switch that will lift and put the fader back to where you had it, which is really cool, kind of a neat detail. And then too, there are little illuminated LED screens above those faders where you can put different icons in there to let the user know what is in control for that fader. And you can get in even further and customize that. As you can see, for one of mine, I have a OBS icon instead of the music symbol for the default music setting. I swapped that out for OBS, so I was able to really get in and customize it, which is super cool. The GoXLR software is very intuitive, and there's even more features in there that you can use to customize your GoXLR. Anything from the equalizer settings, noise gates, compression. There's even a de-esser if you want to adjust the S's. So there's a lot of real-time processing you can do, which is awesome. And And then in there too, of course, you can customize your different voice effects. You can add different sounds to your sample pad. So if you want to do like an MLG horn like that or something, you can do that, which is pretty neat. There's also a bleep button. So that's in there by default, but there's all sorts of stuff like that you can customize. And another neat feature is inside the mixer settings, there's actually, you only have 4 physical faders to adjust, but if you do want more channels and faders to adjust, you can actually go inside the mixer of the GoXLR software, and there's more you can adjust there, which is really neat. And even though it's very overwhelming, and for someone like me who doesn't know sound very well or like sound engineering, I basically just watched a lot of tutorials on, getting the sound equalizer settings pretty neutral and get a decent sound out of your microphone. But to really learn and explore the GoXLR software, it's very intuitive. It's not too bad at all. Really, you can learn a lot of this stuff in a few hours as far as how to use the software. The equalizer stuff and all the sound engineering part is just stuff that you'll probably learn over time. So before we wrap up this video, talking about whether or not the investment in a XLR setup like this is worth the money or not versus what I previously had, and kind of the overall pros and cons. So firing off the pros of a higher end XLR setup like this, first is the overall sound quality. You typically do get way better sound quality out of XLR as long as you have the proper interface with the right audio preamps that fit your microphone very well. You're going to get really good sound quality. Second, which is huge for me, you have a lot of dynamic microphone options, which in the case of the Blue Yeti was really tough because it is a condenser microphone and it picks up so many background elements, and if your room isn't treated right for sound, you can get some reverb and different audio imperfections. Whereas a dynamic microphone is activated by your voice and it's not just listening for sound, it does a tremendous job at blocking out a lot of those unwanted noises. Even though this is kind of a pricey setup, and of course they do go higher, they do actually go a little bit lower. You could get something like a Rode Pod mic, which is a great microphone for the money. I'm not sure if it's dynamic or condenser, but there are some lower priced dynamic microphones out there. And then you can go with a lesser expensive audio interface, but you may need something like a signal amplifier or a signal booster if your microphone is very gain hungry. So that can make your setup a little bit more complicated. And depending on what you go with as far as components, they can be a lot more pricey than just a USB microphone. But all in all, for me, I personally think it's worth the investment, as I really love the audio quality in this particular setup that I have. And the reason why I avoided doing this for a long time and purchasing, an XLR microphone and a pretty nice USB audio interface is mainly just because of the setup and kind of that learning curve to get this all set up and sounding properly. I've seen a lot of people who do have some audio experience or maybe just very little, and they're getting into it and they get something like this set up and it just does not sound good. So that was my biggest fear, is investing a lot of money into it and just not getting the sound that I wanted. But luckily, like I mentioned earlier, the GoXLR and SM7B have been paired a lot together. So there's tons of tutorials out there on how to get the equalizer settings right and all these settings inside the GoXLR app. So luckily, I think we got a pretty good sound now that didn't take a whole lot of effort. I would say just learning the software, getting everything set up, you can do within a couple hours. So the only real cons I can think of when it comes to an XLR microphone setup is one being price point. It can get pretty pricey when it comes to the microphone, and then sometimes even more pricier, a USB audio interface. But there are a lot of options out there. So you can spend a little bit more than this setup, a little bit less. And another con, in my opinion, is just the overall setup. There's a lot more hardware involved, where you have a microphone, an interface, and then potentially you might need a signal amplifier in between the two, opposed to a USB microphone where you just plug it in via USB and you don't have all this extra equipment to worry about. So it's not as simple as many of the USB options. So that's going to wrap up this one, guys. Thank you for checking this video out. I really just wanted to talk about my new SM7B and GoXLR setup and kind of how it's been so far in the transition going from my Blue Yeti microphone, and kind of talk about the pros and cons when it comes to an XLR microphone setup versus USB, and some of the details with the GoXLR and this particular microphone, and whether or not it's worth the investment in going this route for your audio setup. If you want to see how I set this up with OBS, some of the customization options I have on the GoXLR, drop it in the comments and I might make a video like that in the future if you guys want to see that. There is a lot of tutorials already out there, and I'll be sure to link some in the description below so you guys can check those out and kind of see what the deep dive in getting the equalizer stuff set up and all the sound processing set up, so you kind of know before you jump into it. As always, guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.